Hi, I'm KCHOI. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I'm back in New York. I got back a couple of weeks ago after the holidays, but we are going to be leaving this apartment very soon, and you will be seeing lots of apartment and moving related content on my channel. So stay tuned if you like that type of content. It's been a couple of months since I've done a Q&A, but before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace, of course, is an all-in-one website building platform. I'm really happy that I've been able to work with them for the past couple of years because I truly think that it's the easiest and best way to build a website that looks beautiful. No matter what type of website you're trying to build, Squarespace has tons of customizable templates that look amazing. So whether you have a blog or an online store or a portfolio, you can find something that fits your needs and personalize it so that it works for you. And because Squarespace is an all-in-one platform, you not only can host your domain and build your website on it, but you can also use their marketing tools and analytics so that you can better understand your audience and optimize your digital presence. I've been using Squarespace for my own website. I used it for a promotion case that I created last year. No matter what type of site you're trying to build, Squarespace honestly makes it so easy, which is why I love it so much. So if you're interested in starting a website through Squarespace, then go to squarespace.com/KCHOI to get a free trial. And then when you're ready, use the code KCHOI to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All of that info will be at the top of the description box, so go check that out. And thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. Any new resolutions for 2022? I haven't specifically written down my resolutions anywhere, but a few things that I am focusing on right now. First of all, I'm running the Brooklyn Marathon in April, so this beginning part of the year is going to be dedicated to training for that. So obviously training for that marathon and getting back into shape is one of my resolutions. I'm also trying to cook more. So I cooked a lot when I was in grad school in London, and I used to make a lot of what I ate in a day videos. But living in New York, you know, we're spoiled for choice for all the food options out there. But I'm trying to get back into cooking and meal prepping. And finally, another thing that I want to get back into is reading. I feel like I go through such waves with reading where I'll get really excited about books and I'll be on a roll and just read one after the next. But then once I take like even a short pause, then it gets really hard for me to get back into it. I guess it's like that with any type of habit. So just want to get back into the reading habit this year as well. Speaking of running, any advice for people who just started running and how to increase speed and endurance? I do plan to film my whole marathon training process, so I will definitely have a more in-depth video about running and specifically marathon training. But for someone who's just getting into running, my advice would be to focus on the consistency rather than the distance. So it doesn't matter how many miles, or even if it's half a mile or a quarter mile to begin with, just getting out there and doing the runs consistently every day, every other day, whatever it is you set for yourself. I think that's how you build endurance, is just getting into the mentality of running often. And then after that, it's very mental when it comes to adding distance on top of that. So start small and just gradually add the distance, and you'll be surprised at how much you can run. Would you suggest MBA or Master's in Management for a career switch into consulting? I personally don't recommend one over the other. I think it all depends on what your background and your experience is and what your goals are with that master's and with jumping into consulting. If you have over 5 years of experience, you might go and get an MBA and then decide to go into consulting from there. Maybe you're straight out of undergrad, or you just have a couple of years experience and you feel like a master's in management is what will help you transition into consulting, but it's also not a requirement to have a master's degree to switch into consulting. So just keep all those different things in mind. There isn't one right answer. I do have a video detailing the differences between an MBA and a Master's in Management, so I'll link that in the description box as well. It really all depends on your own personal career path and journey. Advice on getting staffed on a project as a new hire. I don't think I can answer this question exactly because the way that people get staffed onto projects probably looks different for different companies and firms, but I think something that could be helpful to you in general is to network and get to know people in the business, especially leaders in the business who are in charge of various projects or client accounts at your company. And just by getting to know them and sharing your interests with them, they can have you in mind when a certain project comes up and you might be a good fit for it. And as a new hire, while it is important to share and be open about what you're interested in, so a specific industry industry or a specific type of strategy that you want to get to know. It's also good to be open to learning lots of different things because, again, if you're just starting out, you don't really know what you know, you don't really know what you're good at or maybe what you don't like until you fully try it out. So be open also to any type of project, even if it's not your first choice of the industry that you might be interested in. How to get my resume and cover letter consultancy ready. I'm gonna link some videos from Steph and Den's channel below. They have really great content about career and finance, but overall, keep it simple, keep it concise. Recruiters who are looking at resumes are only spending a few seconds on each resume. So take out the fluff, put in some compelling pieces of data that are relevant, and also make sure that you're looking at the job description that you're applying for and make sure that your experience is correlated to or reflecting what's in that job description. How did you prep for case interviews? So in the interview process for my current job, I had a day where I had some in-person interviews and that was like the final round. And I had a schedule where I had half an hour with this person and then like 45 minutes with this other group. And one of the portions of my interview was doing a case study presentation. I think that the process has changed now since I interviewed, but what I went through was before the interview, I was given a case study and then I had a couple of days, I think, to prepare a presentation, which is what I did during that in-person interview. In the presentation, we basically had to articulate what the problem was in the case study and then what solution we would present. I ended up making a short video for that. It's kind of hard to explain without like going into all the details, but I wanted to show my creative capabilities as well as my critical thinking capabilities. So that's probably different than the case interviews that you might be asking about, but all the advice that I received about preparing for case interviews has been to just practice and do lots of mock interviews, find cases online to study and practice. Basically just practice, practice, practice. I want to move to NYC, how to find a job as a consultant as an international. Again, I don't know how much insight I can provide here because I don't have personal experience in this area, but when I was in grad school in London, there were of course people from all over the world in my program because London is a very global destination, especially when it comes to education. And so the advice that they would often give to myself and my classmates was if you want to work in London, but it's super competitive and you're having trouble finding a role, you can either apply to a smaller city that's still in the same country, so still in England or the UK, or you can apply to a position in your home country, but at a global company so that you could have the opportunity to transfer in the future. I think the biggest obstacle when it comes to finding a job abroad is the whole visa issue. So I think if you are able to work at a company that's global and then arrange a transfer, I think that the process might be easier in terms of getting a visa. Again, I don't have personal experience, so I can't say for sure, but that was a piece of advice that was given to us and to people who were interested in staying in London but weren't from there. I got a few questions about marriage and kids. So first of all, how did you meet your hubby? We met in college back in 2010 is when we first met, and then we started dating at the end of 2012. So this year it'll be 10 years that we started dating. Several people asked if kids are in the plans and also how to navigate family and kids with work. Do you think it's possible? Definitely see kids in the future, but don't know when in the future that is. It is definitely not anytime super soon. In terms of navigating work life with kids, that's another big question. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom, which I am really, really grateful for. It means that I don't have in my direct experience an example of a working mom. So I have no idea what that looks like. I don't know what it looks like in this modern era and this virtual digital era. I will say that from what I've seen personally, it does seem like men can advance much higher into leadership than women who have kids, and I think that comes from lots of different factors. So all that to say, I have no idea what that's going to look like for me in the future. Besides LA and New York, if you could pick anywhere in the US to live, where would it be? I honestly can't really see myself living anywhere other than LA or New York, and I also haven't been to that many places in the US. I don't think I know too much about any particular city to even consider living there. I know a lot of people talk about moving to Texas or moving to Washington State because there's no income tax, so there's that. I don't know if you're asking this question because you're looking for another place to live besides LA or New York, but that could be a thing to consider, I guess. Sort of related to that, do you see yourself staying in New York for a while? We're definitely staying here for at least 2 more years, and then from there we will assess and see if it makes sense to move back to LA where our families are. So a couple of more years in New York, and again, more apartment and moving content to come, which I'm very excited about. How much do you recommend living in New York? Rate from 1 to 10, 10 as highest, and why? I mean, I think if you want to move to New York and you have that desire in you, then I would recommend 10 out of 10 that you come here. But at the same time, there are lots of other cities in the US and in the world that have so many things to offer. I'm really glad that I live in New York and that I'm getting to experience it. Another thing about New York is it's so different if you're here in college or in your early 20s or in your 30s. I don't see myself raising kids here, so yeah, depends on what your life situation is, what your financial situation is, what your job situation is. But if you have that desire to move to New York, then I say go for it and find a way to make it happen. And last question for this video is, would you consider yourself more Korean or American westernized in your upbringing and culture? I feel very much a fusion. So I don't feel Korean and American. I feel Korean American. I feel like it's its own identity, especially in LA where there's such a big Korean American population. It completely feels like its own culture. My grandfather is the one who immigrated to the States and brought my dad and his siblings over when my dad was just 8 years old. So he grew up here, and then I, of course, grew up here. So many things about my family is very American in that sense, but we also do very traditional Korean things that I think a lot of people in Korea don't even do. So like on Seolnar or New Year's Day, we wear hanbok, which is the traditional Korean clothing. Growing up, I went to Korean school every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon, which was really annoying and miserable as a kid, but I'm very thankful that my parents had me go to Korean school now. So to answer your question, I don't know that I feel more one over the other, but in that Korean American identity, it isn't necessarily 50-50 Korean and American. There are some things that are very Korean, like the food that I enjoy. There are some things, and most things, I think, that are more American, and there's other things in between. So that's a complicated question, so you get a complicated answer. That's it for this video. Be sure to follow me on Instagram if you want to participate in and submit questions for future Q&As, because that's where I usually get all of my questions from. We are going to be starting packing soon because we're moving, so I'm getting a little stressed out about that, but I'm excited to just get settled into our next apartment and to show you that whole process. It's going to be very different than this current apartment, but that'll be a story for a future video. Let me know in the comments what you want to see on this channel. I definitely want to plan out my content for this year and intentionally post things that you're interested in, so please let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!